You're not lighting that grill, Eli. I'll have to report you. HOA Code Section 9, Subsection C. Marjorie Bexley stands at the edge of my backyard, clutching her clipboard like it's a police badge. Her sunglasses catch the morning sun, but not a bit of warmth hits her face. I don't flinch. You sure about that, Marjorie? Because if you're quoting code, you ought to check the old charter. See, my father helped write it. Back before you even moved in, this patch of grass, it's mine, and those bylaws say so. She hesitates. My hands rest on the handles of my dad's grilling tongs, polished from decades of backyard barbecues, passed down after he was gone. If you're looking for a symbol of what matters in this place, you'll find it right here, not in Marjorie's stack of printed violations. I'm Eli Turner. Oak Ridge Meadows might look like any other neighborhood, but this backyard is sacred ground. My dad built the stone fire pit with his own hands. Every summer, every birthday, every homecoming, he'd say, "Son, as long as there's fire and family, this house is yours." Now, he's ashes under the magnolia, and I'll be damned if a clipboard's taking that from me. Quick break, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and hit subscribe if you know what it's like to fight for what's yours. The first barbecue without my father wasn't easy. Tommy, my boy, 11, brown-eyed and restless, kept glancing at the old grill like he expected Grandpa to walk out, apron on, arms wide. We never talk about loss in our house. We show it by keeping old rituals alive, even if they come with threats from the HOA. Marjorie's the latest queen bee since her divorce. She moved in 3 years back, noticed a weed problem, and by spring was running the board. She wields the bylaws like scripture. Sometimes I think she enjoys the power more than she enjoys her own backyard. Every week, it's something new. The mailbox is the wrong color, the pickup's parked facing out, too many lawn chairs on the porch, and every time, she drops a letter in my box. Polite words, but there's a threat humming underneath. This morning, Tommy and I were setting out coals when her shadow crawled over our fence. "Is that lighter fluid?" "Not allowed," she sniffed, nose wrinkling. I shrugged. "No rules against memories." Her lips pressed tight. "Rules are rules, Eli. It's for the safety of everyone." I smiled, slow and flat. "Safety's never been a problem with us. Ask Doug, my uncle's the fire marshal." The look on her face, priceless. She didn't know. Yet. Marjorie scribbled something and turned away, her perfume lingering long after. Tommy nudged me. "Are we in trouble again?" "Nah, kiddo, we're just not bowing to the wrong queen." Later, as I scrubbed the grill with my dad's old wire brush, I thought about how every mark and scar in this yard meant something. Wiffle ball dents on the shed, the stone my mom tripped over and cussed at every summer, the old oak where Dad hung fairy lights for my wife before she passed. When I inherited the house, I promised both of them, my dad and Sarah, that I'd protect it for Tommy. Not just the wood and brick, but what it stands for. That's why every time Marjorie slides another pink slip through the door, it feels personal, like she's erasing a little bit of my family, one code at a time. I set out the chairs, let Tommy pick his favorite, the one with Grandpa's initials carved underneath, and watched as neighbors strolled past, eyes darting between us and Marjorie's porch. Paula Mendoza, the HOA secretary, lingered at the sidewalk, watching, lips moving but saying nothing. Her hands trembled when she waved. There's something haunted in her stare, a secret stuck just behind her teeth. Inside, the phone beeped, another notice of infraction. I didn't even bother reading, not today. I took a breath, looked at Tommy, and struck a match. "Here's to Grandpa, son. Long as there's fire and family, this is home. We're not giving that up for anybody." The barbecue smoke still lingered when the HOA letter landed in my mailbox, right on top of yesterday's notice. A pink slip this time, bold type. Unauthorized outdoor gathering. The paper crinkled in my grip. I wasn't surprised, just tired. Tommy caught me reading it at the kitchen counter. "Did we get another one?" I forced a grin. "Officially, yes. Unofficially, we're setting a neighborhood record." He tried to smile, but the worry clung to him. I made a mental note, keep him out of this as much as I can. Outside, the yard still smelled of charcoal and grass. I could see the tongs, Dad's tongs, leaning against the fire pit. I swear, some days it feels like the world wants to erase all evidence of us ever being here. I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture of the notice, already picturing my response. "Dear Marjorie, Please clarify which bylaw prohibits family, joy, or ribs. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I sat by the kitchen window, watching as Marjorie paraded across her porch. Clipboard, again. Always the clipboard. When she caught me watching, she smiled. A polite, tight thing. She waved, fingers barely moving. I waved back with the notice, let her see it. Her face twitched. Sometimes, that's enough. Later, as I walked Tommy to school, I noticed neighbors eyeing us. Mr. Patel tending his roses, Sandra Klein hauling mulch, and Paula Mendoza hanging up a new community updates flyer. Paula glanced over, her face pinched, uncertain, then quickly looked away. Her hands shook just a little, rustling the stack of flyers. "Well's everyone looking at us?" Tommy whispered. "Don't worry about it, bud. People are just curious." I bent down, tied his shoe with extra care. "We're not doing anything wrong." But the neighborhood was shifting. People whispered behind hands, voices low, always glancing toward Marjorie's porch. Even the kids seemed quieter, sticking to the opposite side of the playground from Tommy. Back home, I tried calling the HOA office, hoping to reach anyone but Marjorie. No luck. Her voicemail played, syrupy sweet, promising callbacks that never came. I left a message anyway. I'd like clarification on which bylaw I supposedly violated, and a copy of the HOA charter, thank you. No reply. By afternoon, a new email pinged notice of non-compliance, failure to register gathering. The digital version included threats, fines, legal action, possible review of membership privileges. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Review of membership privileges for using my own backyard. It's funny, in a dark way, when Sarah and I first moved in, the HOA barely existed. Back then, folks swapped casseroles, not citations. Everything changed when Marjorie took the reins. I stared out at the grill, remembering the last time Dad stood there, apron on, telling a story about how he snuck the tongs past Mom's rules for no more kitchen gadgets. He'd wink and say, "Tradition trumps rules, Eli. Don't forget." Maybe it was his stubbornness I inherited, or just plain spite, but letting Marjorie erase those memories felt like losing him all over again. Mail piled up, 3 more envelopes by dusk. Tommy asked, "Are we really in trouble?" He fiddled with the tongs, tracing his finger over Grandpa's initials. "Listen to me, Tom. This place means something. Your grandpa built it for us, and I'm not letting anybody take it away, not with a letter, not with a fine, not with a stupid rule." He smiled, almost brave. "We'll win, right?" I ruffled his hair. "We'll do better. We'll outlast them." The next day I caught Paula outside, struggling with a jammed mailbox. "Rough morning?" I asked. She flinched, then nodded, lips pressed together, like she wanted to say something, but didn't dare. "Are you all right, Paula?" She hesitated, searching my face. Her voice came out thin. "Careful, Eli. Marjorie's..." Watching closer than usual. That was it. No more, but it said enough. Inside, I looked at the mounting stack of warnings and fines, the legacy in my hands. Dad's tongs, Tommy's wide eyes, Paula's nervous warning. One thing was clear, Marjorie was just getting started. But she didn't know who she was up against. The warnings stacked on the kitchen table looked like a ransom demand. I shoved them aside and stared out the window, watching Paula fumble with her keys at the curb, her hands shaking so bad she dropped her mail twice. She glanced over, caught my eye, and looked away fast, like she was worried Marjorie might see her making eye contact with the neighborhood troublemaker. Tommy padded into the kitchen, hair sticking up, clutching his schoolwork. "Dad, are we gonna get kicked out?" I sat beside him, lowering my voice. "Nobody's kicking us out, Tom. You know what Grandpa used to say? If you're right, don't back down. Just get smart about it." I tried to sound confident, even as that stack of HOA fines made my stomach twist. I knew I needed help, someone who remembered when this place ran on neighborly handshakes, not threats. That night, under the dim porch light, I headed to the monthly HOA meeting, grilling tongs slung in my tote like a silent dare. Marjorie ran things from the head of a plastic folding table in the clubhouse, flanked by Gary Chan and Lois Feldman. Her voice was all sugar and venom. "Mr. Turner, you're here about your, let's call it a pattern of non-compliance?" She barely looked up from her paperwork. Her nails tapped out a rhythm that set my teeth on edge. Gary glanced at me, then back to Marjorie, letting her lead. Lois hid behind a stack of reports, but Paula, she was stuck in the middle, scribbling notes, lips pressed tight. She didn't look at me once, but she didn't look at Marjorie either. I cleared my throat. I'd like the board to clarify which bylaw bans family barbecues. And I'd like to see the original HOA charter. My father was one of the first to sign it. Marjorie barely suppressed a smirk. Well, as you know, Eli, the board reserves the right to amend bylaws for the community's safety and harmony. Surely you wouldn't want to be the reason for another incident? Incident? My voice echoed, sharper than I meant. There's never been a single fire in this yard. The only thing getting burned is common sense. A few chuckles from the back of the room. Neighbors who remembered my dad's infamous 4th of July cookouts. Marjorie's face tightened. She didn't like losing the room, not even for a second. She waved her hand. Your request is noted. The board will discuss and respond by mail. She snapped her folder shut. Meeting adjourned. The scrape of chairs on tile drowned out my reply. Paula packed up slower than usual, hands fumbling, dropping her pen. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. You all right? She froze, still not looking at me, then whispered, barely audible, check the archives. Her fingers slipped me a folded scrap of paper, her handwriting, quick and nervous. Please just be careful. Before I could answer, Marjorie swept in. Everything all right, Paula? Fine, just tired, Paula mumbled, eyes on her shoes. I left, heart hammering. At home, Tommy was waiting up, sitting cross-legged by the grill. Did you win? He asked. Not yet, but we're in the fight. He nodded, serious as any adult, then handed me Grandpa's tongs, just in case. Sleep came slow that night. I lay in bed, flipping Paula's note over and over, thinking about the archives. My father's old boxes in the basement, legal pads, community letters, faded blueprints. If there was something in there Marjorie didn't want found, I'd dig it up. But Paula's warning haunted me. The way her hand shook, the way she spoke without looking up. She was scared, but not just for herself. Maybe for all of us. By morning, I knew what I had to do. Not just for me or Tommy, but for every neighbor too tired or scared to fight back. There was more at stake than barbecue. This was about keeping our stories alive, about making sure Oak Ridge Meadows stayed a place where people mattered more than power. Stop your story or where you're watching from in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And if you're rooting for the underdog, stick around. Things in Oak Ridge Meadows are just heating up. After a sleepless night, I stared at Paula's note, checked the archives, like it was a secret map. Coffee in hand, I slipped into the basement just after dawn, careful not to wake Tommy. Cobwebs hung from old beams, the place thick with that faint scent of earth and cardboard. My dad's boxes sat in a neat row beneath the workbench, every one marked in his scrawl. Taxes, photos, recipients, OA. I flipped open the HOA box, careful not to make too much noise. There it was, ledgers from 20 years back, a battered binder stuffed with newsletters and an old, typewritten charter. My fingers tingled. Couldn't tell if it was from cold or adrenaline. Upstairs, Tommy's footsteps thumped above me. I could picture him peeking through the window at the yard, checking to see if Marjorie was lurking with her clipboard again. Every kid deserves to feel safe at home. I'd make sure he could. Half an hour in, I found a faded memo from my father, his handwriting looping across the page, talking about community, respect, and backyard cookouts. That was his dream, not just rules, but real connection. I tucked the note into my pocket, a small bit of armor for whatever came next. I stepped outside just as the mail truck pulled up, Paula standing on her porch, pretending to sweep but watching closely. The mailman handed me another letter, new color this time, a sickly yellow. Annual dues increase, late fee violation review. Marjorie's campaign was in full swing. Mr. Patel shuffled past with his newspaper, pausing to shake his head at the flurry of envelopes in my hand. Wasn't always like this, Eli. Used to be neighbors talked instead of tattled. I nodded, glancing at Paula. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but her broom scraped the sidewalk harder. Walking Tommy to school, I noticed more changes. Sandra Klein had a shiny fire safety sign staked in her front flower bed. 3 houses down, a neighbor's shed sported a new lock and their lawn ornaments were gone. The neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. nobody sure which side to land on. At pickup, Tommy kicked a stone, scowling. Ryan said his mom called you a troublemaker. Did you punch him? I asked, only half joking. He shook his head. I told him my dad fights for what's right. Grandpa would have done the same. That hit harder than any insult Marjorie could throw. That evening, I gathered a handful of neighbors. Patel, Sandra, the couple from across the street, invited them to the yard for lemonade and pie. No grilling, not tonight. I needed allies, not a ticket. Conversation was awkward at first. Sandra kept glancing toward Marjorie's porch. Patel shuffled his feet. Finally, I laid out the yellow violation notice beside the old charter. I'm not trying to stir up trouble, but the board's changing rules without a vote. My dad helped build this place for all of us, not just for Marjorie's rules. Patel straightened up. Your father was a good man. If he wrote that, it means something. Sandra finally nodded, voice soft. We're tired too, Eli, but Marjorie, she's got everyone scared. Paula stood on her porch, watching, arms folded, face in shadow. For a second, I wondered if she'd join us. Instead, she ducked inside, the front door clicking quietly shut. After the neighbors drifted home, Tommy helped me gather the glasses. Are they mad at us? He whispered. Not mad, just scared. I knelt beside him, voice low. Courage is doing the right thing even when it's hard. He nodded. I could see a little of my dad in his eyes, determined, stubborn, unwilling to quit. Back inside, I pulled out the charter and read through every page, and there it was, a clause on family gatherings, plain as day, left untouched by Marjorie's edits. Proof. I smiled for the first time in days. They might have the board and the bylaws, but I had history and a community that was starting to remember who they were. Night fell thick over Oak Ridge Meadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that the neighborhood was holding its breath, every porch light a quiet lookout post. Upstairs, Tommy drifted off, hugging his pillow, the old tongs resting beneath his bed like a talisman against whatever Marjorie would dream up next. I stayed up, the charter pages spread across the kitchen table, Dad's memo beside them. My eyes blurred, scanning the legalese for anything I'd missed. Family gatherings permitted, provided no criminal or hazardous conduct occurs. It was there, written, signed, tucked away for years. I tapped my pen against the page, thinking, what if Marjorie knew about this all along? What else could she be hiding? A cold draft snaked under the basement door. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down, the floorboards creaking with every step. Shadows danced across the boxes and old holiday decorations, the air thick with dust and secrets. I dug through bins labeled malls, sports, misc, each one heavier than I remembered. Somewhere near the back wall, my foot hit something hard. I knelt, brushing away an old tarp to reveal a battered lockbox I'd never seen before. The lock was rusty, the number dial stuck at 23. Dad's football jersey number. My heart thudded, sudden and heavy. I lugged it up to the kitchen, hands shaking. Tommy's snores echoed softly from his room. On the top shelf, I found Dad's spare keys. One slid right in. The lock groaned, sticking for a second before popping open. Inside, a bundle of papers, yellowed and crinkled. I recognized Dad's handwriting instantly. There were meeting notes, clippings about neighborhood votes, even a few typed letters from the very first board president. Tucked at the bottom, I found a photograph. Dad, arm around a much younger Paula Mendoza, both beaming over a smoky grill. The sight punched a hole straight through my chest. What did she know that I didn't? A sheet of paper fluttered to the floor. On it, scrawled in Dad's firm hand, never let one person change the rules for everyone else. Remember the people behind the pages. Underneath, a list of names. Board members, neighbors, even Marjorie's, each with dates and cryptic notes. Backyard fire, permitted, community vote, passed. Board amendment, failed. My head spun. Paula's warning, the old note, that faded picture, they weren't just clues, they were a road map. If Marjorie was amending rules without a vote, that was more than bullying. That was illegal. I picked up my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found Paula. Heart pounding, I typed, "Found Dad's notes. I think there's more to this. Can we talk?" It took minutes for her reply. "Meet me at the park before sunrise. Don't bring anything you found. She watches everything." The next morning, the sky still barely pink, I slipped out with Tommy snoring and the house silent. At the playground, Paula stood by the old swings, coat pulled tight, eyes darting toward every passing car. She didn't say hello, just handed me a coffee cup with a napkin wrapped around it. Marjorie's planning something big. She wants you gone before the next board election. Her voice shook, not from cold but from fear. She's got Gary and Lois scared, and she'll do anything to win. I unfolded the napkin, a hastily scribbled list of board meetings, amendments, and votes, some crossed out, others circled in red. Paula's handwriting matched Dad's old notes almost exactly. She glanced at the ground, then up at me, voice raw. If she finds out I helped you, I'm finished. I promised. No one's gonna know. You helped my family once already. Now I help you. The morning sun hit the swings, lighting up the rust on the chains. I pocketed the napkin and thanked her, my breath hanging in the cool air. As I walked home, I realized I wasn't fighting alone anymore. The game was shifting, and the next move was mine. The walk home from the park was a slow one. I kept checking over my shoulder, not because I expected Marjorie to leap out from behind a mailbox, but because the whole neighborhood felt like it was listening. Every window a set of eyes, every porch light a little too bright for dawn. Inside, I found Tommy already awake, hair wild, hunched over a bowl of cereal. "Where'd you go?" he asked, spoon clinking against the bowl. "Just out for some air," I said, ruffling his hair. "Big day. We're firing up the grill for Grandpa, remember?" His face lit up. He always loved that part, the ritual of it. Not just the food, but the feeling that our little family history was something worth defending. I got to work in the yard, cleaning the grill and pulling out the folding chairs. The sun was barely up, the grass still damp beneath my boots. I could almost hear Dad's voice over my shoulder, teasing about my pitiful fire-building skills. I set the tongs on the old stone pit, letting them catch the early morning light. They belonged to him, but now they were mine, carrying every lesson, every stubborn bit of pride he passed down. As neighbors started emerging, some just waved, others kept their eyes down. I caught Sandra watching from behind her kitchen curtain, and Patel gave me a slow nod on his morning walk. Paula was nowhere to be seen. Maybe she needed a break after meeting me in the cold. By noon, I had the coals going, and Tommy bounced around the yard, trying to help without setting himself on fire. Every time he passed the grill, he tapped the tongs for luck. "Grandpa always said a barbecue's just a family story with a little more smoke," he announced, voice loud enough for any snooping ears to hear. I grinned, watching the smoke curl up into the bright blue sky. For a moment, things felt normal. We set out paper plates, my wife's old lemonade pitcher, and a plastic tablecloth decorated with faded red checks. I kept one eye on the street, waiting. Marjorie didn't make us wait long. She swept up the sidewalk, perfume cloud first, phone in hand, her face twisted into a smile that never touched her eyes. "Eli, you're aware there's a restriction on open flames, yes?" She held her phone out, already dialing. "I'm calling this in for the safety of the community." I raised the tongs, brandishing them like a badge. "We're within our rights. The original charter allows for family gatherings, and my uncle, the Fire Marshal, signed off last year. You want to check my paperwork? I've got it ready." Her lips tightened, and she snapped a photo of the grill. "Rules are rules. This is a violation. If the authorities won't act, the HOA will." My chest tightened, but I kept my cool. "Call who you need, Marjorie. My uncle's on speed dial if you'd like to talk fire safety." She hesitated, realizing, maybe for the first time, that she didn't have the only ace in the deck. Her gaze flickered to Tommy, who stuck his tongue out and ran for the lemonade. 5 minutes later, a fire truck rolled up. My uncle Doug at the wheel, looking every inch the authority in his Navy uniform. He hopped out, grinning at Tommy and shaking my hand. "Everything up to code here?" he called, loud enough for half the block to hear. "Absolutely, Chief," I said. "Want a burger?" Doug strode right past Marjorie, giving her a nod. She tried to hand him her phone, but he waved it off, inspecting the grill with a practiced eye. "Looks good to me, no violations. Smells even better." Marjorie bristled, but Doug just grinned. "If anyone's got a complaint, they can take it up with my office." Neighbors started filtering out, drawn by the siren or maybe the smell of real food. Patel laughed. Sandra brought over a pie. For a few bright moments, the street felt like home again. Tommy clapped me on the back, eyes wide with pride. "We did it, Dad. Grandpa would be proud." And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. Ever had a neighbor try to shut down your family traditions, or an unexpected ally show up just in time? I want to hear your stories. Drop a comment about where you're watching from, or tell me about the last time you stood your ground. By sunset, the barbecue was history, but the rumble of neighborly voices still echoed up and down Oak Ridge Meadows. Paula didn't join us, not that I expected her to, but I caught her standing behind her living room window, watching the laughter spill across the yards. For once, Marjorie's porch sat empty. Guess even self-appointed royalty needs a moment to regroup. Tommy helped clear the plates, stacking them high and wobbly. Dad, did we win for real, or is Marjorie gonna just come back madder? I squeezed his shoulder. Winning's not a moment, bud. Sometimes it's just holding your ground, showing them you're not scared. It sounded strong, but the truth? I knew Marjorie wasn't finished. Bullies like her didn't quit. They recalculated. After Tommy crashed for the night, I sorted through the papers from Dad's lockbox again. I kept circling the list of names and votes. Paula's handwriting matching Dad's, arrows and underlines like secret signals. Paula's courage had cost her already, and now, with Doug's public support, the board would be scrambling. My phone buzzed just past midnight. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Paula's voice came in a rushed whisper. I can't sleep. I need you to come to the community office tomorrow, early, before Marjorie gets in. Bring those notes you found. There's stuff on the HOA computer, emails, threats. You need to see them before she wipes everything. Well, me? Because you're the only one who'll do something with it, and I'm tired of being scared. The next morning, I left Tommy with Patel. He offered without me asking. Just a nod and a, do what you have to, Eli. At the HOA office, Paula was waiting, hair still wet, hands trembling as she fumbled for her keycard. The office was colder than I remembered, sterile, humming with that low electric buzz you only notice when you're up to something risky. Paula didn't waste time. Here, log in with my password, she hesitated. If this goes wrong, I never gave you anything. Don't worry, we're not alone anymore. She smiled, faint but real. Her voice shook, but her hands got steadier with each click. On the screen, folders popped open. Board correspondence, meeting minutes, discipline actions. We scrolled past months of emails, and my jaw tightened with every line. Marjorie threatening to blacklist problem households, instructing Gary and Lois to make examples of anyone pushing back. She'd even sent the board a memo. If Eli refuses, escalate fines. He'll give in. Paula clicked on a draft email, eyes darting to the door. Here's the one she was going to send to the city, reporting you for child endangerment. My fists clenched. She'd go that far? She already has, but the city inspectors ignored her so far. She's running out of allies, Eli. I copied everything to a flash drive, nerves shot. Paula handed me a folder. Physical printouts of meeting minutes she'd edited, each one showing votes that never actually happened. I lied for her, Eli. I thought if I didn't, I'd lose my house. I can't do it anymore. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the toll it'd taken. You did the right thing now. That's what matters. She let out a shaky breath, the relief clear on her face. Get this to someone who can help, lawyer, press, whatever. Just don't let her bury us. As I left, she stopped me. Be careful. Marjorie'll come after you next. I paused at the door, feeling the weight of all that evidence. Paula's gamble, my dad's legacy, Tommy's faith that I could keep us safe. For the first time, I felt something shift. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were fighting back, one truth at a time. The minute I left the HOA office, the morning sun felt sharper, like even the sky was watching. The flash drive in my pocket was small, but it might as well have been a stick of dynamite. Every step down the sidewalk, I pictured Marjorie storming in, flipping over every desk, demanding to know where Paula was. I texted Patel, all good, I'll pick up Tommy in an hour. He replied with a single thumbs up. Solid guy, never asked for details, just understood what mattered. On the walk home, I caught Sandra Klein out in her yard, deadheading petunias with nervous, clipped motions. She didn't say anything, just nodded. A little tighter than usual, like she had heard a rumor and wasn't sure what side to pick. At home, Tommy was drawing at the kitchen table, the old grilling tongs next to his pencil box. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Are we safe now? I tried to answer, but words stuck. We're getting there, kid. Just gotta finish what we started. I made a call. My friend Danny's a paralegal, the type who reads ordinances for fun and never misses a detail. You busy? Never for you, Eli. What's up? I filled him in, every ugly detail, right down to Marjorie's threats and Paula's risk. He whistled low. You got the paper trail? More than that, I got emails, fake votes, a list of every time she's gone after someone. Good. Don't sit on it. File a complaint with the state HOA commission. Get a copy to the city too, especially with that child endangerment thing. They want to know she's crying wolf. The next 2 hours were a blur. I scanned files, printed copies, double-checked dates. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a kind of wild hope. Tommy brought me lemonade, silent and solemn, watching like he knew this wasn't just about a backyard or barbecue anymore. Paula texted mid-afternoon. She knows something's up. Gary and Lois are getting nervous. I replied, sit tight. If you get cornered, call me. You're not in this alone. I went outside, sitting on the porch with the folder of evidence in my lap. Marjorie's car crept by, windows rolled down, sunglasses gleaming. I held her gaze, lifting the folder just enough for her to see it. She sped up, gravel popping under her tires. A small victory, but I took it. Danny called back that evening. Complaints filed, state's opening a review, city clerk wants a statement, and Eli, don't talk to Marjorie alone. She's gonna come at you sideways, maybe even try to bait you into losing your temper. Not my first rodeo, I said, but my voice sounded thin. He laughed. Doesn't have to be. Just don't let her rattle you. Tommy and I grilled hot dogs for dinner. No crowd, just the two of us and the old tongs resting by the fire. I told him stories about his grandpa, how he'd built the first pit out of scavenged bricks, how he'd sneak extra marshmallows when Mom wasn't looking. Tommy laughed, the sound bouncing off the fence. Do you think Grandpa would like how we're fighting back? I nodded, throat tight. He'd say it's about time. After sunset, I went through the paperwork again, marking every line that could bring Marjorie down. I kept thinking about Paula, what she risked, how her hands stopped shaking when she finally stood up for something real. Tomorrow I'd deliver copies to the city office, the commission, and maybe, just maybe, call the local paper. For the first time since this mess began, I believed we could win, not just escape the fines or keep the grill, but actually make this place home again. And as the stars blinked on above Oak Ridge Meadows, I realized something else. When people stop hiding and start fighting together, even the loudest bully can't hold the neighborhood hostage forever. The next morning started with a knock on my door, sharp and urgent. I found Sandra Klein on my porch, still in her gardening gloves, cheeks flushed. She handed me a tin of cookies, whispering, Marjorie's furious. She was up and down the street last night, said you're dragging us all down with you. Her voice trembled, but she squared her shoulders. I told her you're just standing up for what's right. I let her in, poured her a coffee. Tommy peeked around the corner, eyebrows raised. He seemed older these days, watchful, thoughtful, asking questions he never would have thought to ask 6 months ago. Sandra slid into a chair, wringing her hands. I used to like Marjorie, you know, before all this. She helped me fix my mailbox once, even brought soup when I was sick. Now, her voice trailed off. I'm tired of being scared in my own home. I nodded. Me too. And you're not alone, Sandra. The neighborhood was waking up. Patel was out front, raking his leaves like it was a battle he refused to lose. Gary and Lois, the other board members, avoided my eyes as they drove past. The atmosphere had shifted. People didn't just tiptoe around Marjorie anymore. They watched, calculated, waited to see what would happen next. I took the folder of evidence, Paula's printouts, Dad's notes, the emails, and made copies at the drugstore. The clerk eyed the growing pile but didn't ask. I guess everyone knew something was brewing. By midday, I'd filed everything at City Hall and the State HOA Commission. The clerk stamped each page, glanced at my name, and gave a tiny smile. You're not the first to complain about Oak Ridge Meadows board. You might be the first with real proof. Driving home, I passed Marjorie standing by her mailbox, phone glued to her ear. Her jaw was set, eyes icy. She didn't wave. I didn't either. Patel flagged me down as I pulled into the driveway. You did it, didn't you? He said, voice low. You stood up. I couldn't have done it alone, I told him. He nodded, quiet pride in his eyes. The whole street's talking, Eli. Some are scared, but most are rooting for you. Inside, Tommy had set up his old action figures around the grill, staging a siege. The knights have to guard the barbecue from the mean queen, he explained, deadly serious. I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in months. It was so on the nose I wanted to hug him. In the evening, Patel knocked on the door with a pie. My wife wanted to say thank you, he said, voice soft. She was scared to put flowers out after Marjorie fined her for unauthorized planting. Maybe now. I clapped him on the shoulder. Now's the time to stop hiding. As dusk crept over the neighborhood, a few more neighbors drifted by. Quiet, cautious, grateful. Sandra brought her daughter over for lemonade. Gary slowed his car as if to join, but kept going, his face unreadable. The sense of fear was melting, replaced by something restless. Change was in the air. I stepped out onto the porch, holding the old tongs, and caught sight of Paula watching from her window. She gave a timid wave, relief and fear warring in her eyes. She'd done the bravest thing of all, told the truth when it counted. I hoped she knew I wouldn't forget that. Tommy climbed into my lap, tired but happy. Are we winning, Dad? I hugged him close, looking out over the houses, the neighbors, the battered grill. We're not just winning, Tom. We're making sure nobody else has to fight this fight alone. For the first time, Oak Ridge Meadows didn't feel divided. It felt awake, like a place worth defending again, and deep down I knew the reckoning was coming, one last storm before the calm. Have you ever watched your whole community change, just because one person stood up? Or maybe you've been that person yourself. Tell me your story in the comments, or just let me know where you're tuning in from. The night before the big meeting, sleep was a rumor. Tommy tossed and turned. I found myself at the window, watching porch lights wink out one by one across Oak Ridge Meadows. It almost felt peaceful if you ignored the legal-sized envelope on my kitchen table. The one stamped City Notice, Public Review Requested. That was my invitation to stand up in front of neighbors, board members, maybe even a city inspector, and say everything out loud. No more hiding behind emails or secondhand stories. Tommy patted out, rubbing his eyes. You okay, Dad? I pulled him in, feeling how small his shoulders still were under my hand. Big day tomorrow. You know how some fights feel too big to win? Doesn't mean you don't swing anyway. He nodded, quiet. Grandpa always said, the hardest jobs matter most. I smiled. That stubborn streak ran deep. First light brought an early visitor. Paula knocked. No clipboard, just a battered manila folder and shadows under her eyes. She tried to scare me last night, Paula said, voice soft. Said she'd tell the whole street I was a traitor, get the board to start foreclosure, but I couldn't sleep, Eli. I had to bring you this. Inside the folder were original ballots and handwritten notes, some even signed by neighbors I knew had moved away years ago. Fake votes. She's been filling them out for months, for every rule she wants passed. Her hands trembled as she spoke, but her chin lifted, just a bit. I looked at Paula, really looked. Not just the nerves, but the relief, too. She was scared, but she'd chosen the right side. I squeezed her shoulder. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, we face it together. Mid-morning, the whole neighborhood buzzed with something electric. Marjorie prowled up and down the street, making calls, knocking on doors. One last show of power. Gary and Lois avoided her, but didn't look my way either. Sandra stuck a daisy in her mailbox and gave me a thumbs up from behind her curtain. I taped the city notice to the front door. No more secrets. Around lunch, Uncle Doug rolled by in his Fire Marshal uniform, window down, waving as if we were just neighbors and not kin plotting a boardroom showdown. You need anything? He called, voice a little too casual. It's your best poker face, Chief. He grinned. Let 'em try me. By afternoon, I laid out all the evidence. Paula's folder, Dad's lockbox notes, emails, minutes, fake ballots. Tommy helped, his small hands careful and serious. We're like detectives, he said, setting a stack of printouts just so. Grandpa would have loved this. A soft knock at the door, Patel in his best shirt. He handed me a mug of sweet tea and a quiet smile. You ready, Eli? As I'll ever be. We'll be there. All of us. He nodded toward the street where I could see neighbors gathering, forming clumps of nervous hope near the sidewalk. The air felt heavy, but not with dread, more like anticipation, a storm about to break. Tommy squeezed my hand. You're not scared, are you? I bent to meet his eyes. I am. But sometimes you do the right thing even when you're scared. Evening came. Paula met us at the corner. Her eyes darted, but she didn't flinch. You bring everything? I hefted the folders, feeling the weight in my arms and in my chest. Every last scrap. Together we walked up the path to the clubhouse, faces pressed to windows, the whole neighborhood watching. Tomorrow, nothing would be the same. Win or lose, I'd finally get to tell the truth with everyone listening. No more fear. No more silence. The clubhouse was packed. Standing room only, every chair filled and neighbors lining the walls. For the first time in years, people weren't avoiding each other's eyes. Marjorie sat at the front, perfectly poised, but her hand gripped the gavel a little too tight. Gary and Lois flanked her, stiff and silent. The air was thick, humming with anticipation and nerves. Tommy stood next to me, clinging to the old grilling tongs. I squeezed his shoulder. You can wait outside if you want, I whispered. He shook his head. I want to see what happens. Marjorie's voice cut through the chatter, crisp as winter. Order, please. We're here to address allegations of misconduct. Paula coughed, stepping forward before Marjorie could finish. We're here to hear everyone, not just the board. Her words sent a ripple through the crowd. Neighbors straightened, eyes sharpening. Marjorie shot Paula a glare. Fine. Mr. Turner, you have something to say? I stepped up, folders tucked under my arm, heart pounding. I could feel Dad's presence in the room. Every neighbor he'd ever helped, every cookout, every late-night talk. Thanks, Marjorie. Yeah, I do. I took a breath. For months, this board's been making rules behind closed doors. You've fined people for things that were never even voted on, threatened to take homes, tried to turn neighbor against neighbor. That stops tonight. A hush fell. I laid out the evidence. Dad's notes, Paula's printouts, the emails, and, like the final card, original ballots in Marjorie's handwriting. Look at these. Ballots for rules that never passed, fake votes, signatures from people who don't even live here anymore. I handed copies to Gary, Lois, and a city official at the back, who'd quietly slipped in halfway through. Marjorie's cheeks flushed, voice shaky for the first time. Those are private board matters. You have no right. Uncle Doug, standing at the back in his Fire Marshal uniform, called out, Everyone has a right to fair treatment, Marjorie, and you know it. Paula stepped up again, her voice steadier now. I went along with it because I was scared. But not anymore. We deserve better. She looked out at the crowd, at Sandra, Patel, even Gary, and Lois. We all do. Neighbors started murmuring, louder than before. Sandra stood. You fined me for a rose bush, Marjorie, said it was for community harmony. Where's the harmony in lying? Patel nodded, adding, You threatened my wife. That's not leadership. Lois glanced at Gary, then stood. I'm done. I won't be part of this anymore. She dropped her pen, shoulders finally relaxing. Gary swallowed hard but followed her lead. Marjorie pounded the gavel, voice desperate now. Enough. This is a witch hunt. But the crowd was done listening. The city official stepped forward, calm but firm. Ms. Bexley, due to credible evidence of misconduct, the city is placing Oak Ridge Meadows Board under review effective immediately. All pending fines and actions are suspended. A stunned silence, then a single clap, hesitant, from Sandra, quickly joined by others until the whole room was filled with applause. Tommy squeezed my hand, beaming. Paula wiped tears from her cheeks. Even Patel laughed, the sound echoing. I caught Marjorie's eyes, cold, furious, small for the first time since she took charge. She tried to speak, but the crowd drowned her out. Neighbors gathered around, thanking me, hugging Paula, even Lois. The old tongs felt heavy in my hands, warm from Tommy's grip. For the first time in ages, Oak Ridge Meadows felt like home, like it belonged to all of us again. The applause faded, but its echo lingered long after Marjorie slipped out the back of the clubhouse, her empire crumbling behind her. Folks didn't rush off. For the first time in months, Oak Ridge Meadows felt lighter. The lines that divided us were blurred now, replaced with a sense of hard-won belonging. Neighbors mingled, sharing relief, stories, even laughs. Paula stood a little taller, no longer shrinking from shadows. She hugged Sandra, then Lois, each of them exchanging words too quiet for me to hear, but you could see it in their faces. The worst was over. Patel found me outside under the old oak, the moon shining on the same grass my dad once paced, watching me stumble through barbecue lessons. He handed me a slice of pie, nodding at Tommy, who chased fireflies with 2 other kids. No worry in his steps, just a boy being a boy again. "You kept your promise, Eli," Patel said quietly. "To your family, to all of us." I shrugged, too tired for speeches, just did what my dad would have done, what any of us should have. He smiled, clapped me on the shoulder, then wandered off toward the laughter. Inside, the city official asked Paula to stay behind, explaining the board would be reorganized. Fair elections, full oversight. Lois volunteered to step in until the process was complete. No one objected. Even Gary looked relieved. Marjorie's name would be wiped from the books, but the lesson would stick with all of us. I found Tommy by the grill, poking at the embers with Grandpa's tongs, the fire soft and safe. He looked up as I sat beside him on the bench. Dad's bench, the one he built before I was even born, which somehow survived every storm, every year, every fight. Tommy leaned into me, eyes bright in the darkness. "Are you happy, Dad?" I thought about everything, the fear, the risk, the weight of standing alone, until I realized I never really was. I ruffled his hair. "Yeah, buddy, I am. Not just because we won, because we did it right. That matters most." We sat a long while, listening to the sounds of Oak Ridge Meadows settling into a new kind of quiet. Not silence, just peace. Paula wandered by with a mug of coffee, her eyes no longer haunted. Sandra and her daughter strolled past with lemonade. Patel waved from his porch. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I stared at the old tongs, now blackened with years of use, and placed them beside me on the bench, where legacy meets tomorrow. I knew, finally, that Dad would have been proud. Maybe this story isn't just about rules and fights, but about what you refuse to lose, no matter how many times someone tries to take it. Justice, dignity, family, sometimes the things that last longest are the ones you defend together. And as neighbors trickled home beneath the magnolia tree, I whispered my thanks for every stubborn soul who refused to give in. You ever had to stand your ground or watched a community come back together after a storm? Drop your story in the comments or just tell me where you're watching from. Everyone's got a battle. Let's hear yours. And if you made it this far, thanks for standing with us in Oak Ridge Meadows. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right.